Captain Ethan Cross sat rigidly in the pilot's seat of the Odyssey, staring into the abyss that stretched before them. The Zeta 9 system wasn't supposed to be empty. Charts indicated at least 3 active colonies, mining stations, and a freighter route, but all the scanners came up silent. Not even the faint hum of life. "Comms check," Ethan said, his voice cutting through the low hum of the bridge. His crew responded with mechanical acknowledgement, but the words felt hollow. Static lingered in the intercom, a ghostly reminder that no other human, was answering. "This doesn't make sense," muttered Lieutenant Arya Kane, standing by the sensor console. Her fingers hovered over the holographic interface, eyes scanning the streaming data. All systems operational. No anomalies, nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, nothing is out there. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had been in silence before. Space had a way of swallowing sound, of making even seasoned explorers doubt their senses. But this was different. This was a silence that pressed against the mind, heavy and deliberate. Then the sensor display flickered. A single blip appeared, dim, almost translucent. Ethan leaned forward. The blip was a vessel. Human. Drifting. Lifeless. "Sir," Kane whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "We've got a vessel, long-range scans show no crew aboard. No power. No life signs. It's dead." "Dead or abandoned?" Ethan asked, voice low. He didn't like the sound of either option. "Coordinates." Kane tapped rapidly, and a soft chime indicated the location. Drifting near the outer rim of Zeta 9. No engines. No distress signal. Nothing. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Bring us in." The Odyssey moved with calculated precision, engines whispering against the vacuum. The ghost ship grew larger on the viewport, a hulking silhouette against the scattered light of distant stars. Its hull was scarred, blackened in places, as if it had fought something in the dark and lost. Marcus Vale, the ship's technician, leaned over the sensor readouts, frowning. No signs of struggle, no hull breach. No environmental anomalies. Nothing that explains why they're gone. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Then what happened? The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Space wasn't kind to imagination, but silence had a way of twisting reason into fear. The ship seemed to float there, waiting. "Boarding team, gear up," Ethan said. "We're going in." Moments later, the airlock hissed as the team prepared to exit. Ethan led, helmet lights cutting through the void. The ghost ship loomed larger with every step. Its doors were ajar, inviting them in, or warning them to stay away. Inside, the corridors were dark and silent. The lights flickered occasionally, casting long, distorted shadows that stretched like tendrils along the walls. Ethan's footsteps echoed, unnaturally loud in the eerie quiet. "Status," he whispered into his comms. "All clear," Kane replied. But even her voice betrayed hesitation. No movement. No, nothing. They reached the control room. Panels were dead, screens black. Logs were wiped clean, as if someone, or something, had erased every trace of life. Ethan ran his hand over the console. Cold. Empty. "Sir, look at this," Marcus said. He pointed to a small datapad lying on the floor. Dust coated it, but the last entry was readable. "We see them. Shadows move between stars. They are patient. They are waiting." Ethan's stomach clenched. Shadows? In the vacuum? He shook his head, trying to clear the unease creeping up his spine. "Get the rest of the crew in here," Ethan ordered. "We're scanning for anything unusual. I want answers." As they swept through the rest of the ship, Ethan noticed something subtle. The shadows in the corners didn't behave normally. They didn't align with the lights. They seemed stretched, warped, almost reaching. Each flicker of his helmet light made them quiver like living things, always just at the edge of perception. "Captain," Kane said, voice tight. I think there's something on this ship with us. Something that doesn't want to be seen." Ethan swallowed hard. He had heard the stories, isolated colonies, lost freighters, ships that vanished without trace, but he never thought he'd face it himself. And yet, as the hum of the Odyssey vibrated through his chest, He felt it, an awareness. Something waiting. Something watching. A soft chime on the sensors drew his attention. Another blip appeared, this time on their own system. Small, fleeting, impossible to track. It vanished as quickly as it came. "Sir," Marcus said, voice shaking. It's here." Ethan didn't respond. He only stared into the darkness of the ghost ship, knowing that whatever hunted in the void of Zeta 9 had just acknowledged them. And in the silent void, the first seed of fear took root. The boarding team moved cautiously through the ghost ship, the cold metal corridors stretching endlessly before them. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot in the silent vessel, each sound amplified by the emptiness. Captain Ethan Cross led the way, his flashlight piercing the darkness, scanning walls, ceilings, and floors. "Stay close," he whispered into the comms. "We don't know what we're dealing with." Technician Marcus Vale followed, adjusting the portable scanners. They emitted soft hums as they swept the air for any sign of life. All readings came back null. "Nothing. Still nothing," Marcus muttered. "No biological matter, no heat, nothing that's alive." "Yet someone, or something, was here," Ethan said grimly, glancing at the datapad they had found in the control room. The words echoed in his mind, "Shadows move between stars. They are patient. They are waiting." The words had seemed cryptic at first, almost poetic. Now, they felt like a warning. As they turned a corner, a sudden flicker of movement caught Ethan's eye. He froze. "Did you see that?" he asked, voice low. Marcus shook his head. "See what?" Ethan's flashlight swept the corridor. Shadows stretched along the walls, but they seemed wrong. One shadow twisted independently of the light source, elongating, shrinking, and sliding along the floor with a purpose. "Ghost light?" Marcus suggested, trying to rationalize it. "No," Ethan said, his jaw tight. "It's moving on its own." The team continued, but the feeling of being watched gnawed at them. Every corridor corner seemed to hold a lurking presence, and every time they passed a junction, the shadows shifted, subtly, but unmistakably. Then a scream ripped through the ship. It was sudden, raw, human. "Arya!" Ethan shouted, spinning toward the sound. They ran down the corridor, but it was empty. The scream had come from just ahead, but when they arrived, nothing remained. No one, no body, not even a disturbance in the dust that covered the floor. Marcus' voice trembled. It's here. Something is here." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had faced hostile species, rogue AI, and extreme space phenomena, but this was different. This wasn't a fight they could see. This was hunting in its purest form. "Spread out," Ethan ordered. "Careful. No one goes alone." They fanned through the corridors, flashlights scanning in slow, methodical sweeps. The flickering shadows continued to move, but now they weren't just anomalies, they were purposeful. They seemed to retreat whenever someone approached, then reappear in the periphery of vision, just beyond reach. Then Kane froze, her hand gripping Ethan's arm. "Look," she whispered. In a corridor junction, a shadow stretched across the wall, impossibly long, twisting into shapes that defied logic. It moved toward them, but no one could see it, not really. Only the corner of their eyes caught its impossible angles. "It's imitating us," Marcus said, voice barely audible. It mimics movement, but not fully. Just enough to confuse." Ethan's pulse hammered. They weren't just being observed, they were being studied, toyed with. And the realization hit him like a physical blow. Whatever this was, it was intelligent. Patient. Hungry. "Keep moving," Ethan said, forcing a steady tone. "We find the bridge. We get answers." As they progressed, the shadows thickened, clustering in the corners. The temperature dropped, frost formed on the floor and walls, though sensors confirmed nothing in the environment should be causing it. Breathing became louder in their helmets. Each step sounded louder, heavier, as if the ship itself was amplifying their fear. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the far end of the corridor. Tall, dark, featureless, just a silhouette against the dim emergency lights. Ethan froze. The figure didn't move like a human. Its limbs bent in angles that shouldn't exist. It was utterly silent. Stay calm, Ethan whispered, raising his hand. But the figure moved, not toward them, but to the side, and in that instant, it vanished, as if swallowed by the walls themselves. A chill ran down Marcus' spine. It's teleporting. Not teleporting, Ethan said, voice low and firm. Hunting. Waiting for the right moment. Another scream erupted, this one closer, behind them. Arya spun, and for a brief instant, saw something slip past her peripheral vision, a shadow detaching itself from the wall, stretching, then folding into nothingness. They can manipulate shadows, Marcus stammered. Or maybe they are the shadows. Ethan's hand clenched the rail. His crew's faces were pale, eyes wide with fear. Every instinct screamed at him, get out. But he knew the answer was ahead, on the bridge. Whatever force had wiped out this ship, whatever had left only shadows in its wake, they had left a trail. And if humanity was to survive, they needed to follow it. The corridor ended in a bulkhead. Ethan reached for the access panel to open it, but a cold sensation gripped his spine, crawling along his nerves like icy fingers. The shadows around them seemed to thrum with movement, stretching toward him, yet never quite touching. Captain, we need to leave, Marcus said, voice trembling. Ethan shook his head. We're not leaving. Not until we know what we're facing. Then, just as he pressed the panel, a figure moved in the corner of his vision, a living shadow, twisting impossibly, lunging, and for the first time, the team realized the hunting wasn't abstract. It was real. Something was aboard the ship with them. Something patient. Something that thrived in darkness. And it was already learning how they moved. The Odyssey's corridors had never felt more alive, or more hostile. Captain Ethan Cross pressed his back against the cold metal wall, flashlight cutting a narrow swath of illumination ahead, but it was almost useless. Shadows twisted unnaturally, elongating along the walls and floors, then vanishing entirely when he tried to focus on them. They're following us, Marcus Vale whispered, voice tight. His scanner had started glitching, static spiking at irregular intervals. Every time he tried to pinpoint the source of the anomaly, the readings disappeared. Everywhere we look, they are gone. And yet, they're there. Ethan exhaled slowly, trying to steady his racing heart. Keep moving. We need to reach the bridge. That's where the ship logs will be. That's where we'll find out what we're dealing with. Lieutenant Arya Kane shivered, her eyes darting to the corners of the corridor. It's learning us. Every step we take, it's adjusting. I've never seen anything like it. It's intelligent. The crew advanced cautiously, the silence thickening around them, pressing in like a weight. Every sound they made, footsteps, breathing, even the soft hum of their suits, seemed amplified, feeding the unseen predator that had claimed this ship long before they arrived. Then a door hissed open ahead, startling the team. Ethan raised his hand. Stay alert. Could be structural, could be. His words died in his throat. A figure emerged from the shadows. Not fully solid, not fully empty. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, limbs bending at impossible angles. The light from their helmets caught glints of something reflective, eyes. Before the figure disappeared again, folding into the darkness as if the corridor itself had swallowed it. Marcus swallowed hard. It can move through walls, it's not bound by the ship's layout. Ethan nodded grimly. We need to assume it can go anywhere, see anything, and wait for us to make a mistake. They pressed on, the oppressive silence broken only by occasional mechanical chirps from failing equipment. The shadows became bolder. They stretched across the floor, mimicking the crew's movements, sometimes slightly delayed, sometimes anticipating a step before it happened. Each flicker of light seemed to make them pulse, as though alive. A sudden, wet, scraping sound echoed through the corridor. Arya spun, flashlight trembling in her hands, but saw only an empty hallway. The sound came again, closer, behind them. A shadow shifted along the ceiling, drooping down like a living tendril, stretching toward Marcus before snapping back into the darkness. It's taunting us, Marcus said, voice almost a whisper. It wants us scared. It wants us alone. Then we don't give it the satisfaction, Ethan replied, keeping his tone steady. Keep moving. Don't separate. They reached the junction leading to the bridge, only to find the bulkhead locked. Ethan moved to override it. A cold sensation prickled the back of his neck, a crawling awareness that something was right behind him. "Captain," Arya's voice was tight. "I can feel it. It's close. Too close." Before Ethan could respond, a shadow detached itself from the wall, elongated, amorphous, like liquid darkness given form. It lunged toward them, stretching impossibly across the floor, then recoiling. The team stumbled backward, lights flickering wildly. Marcus' scanner went berserk, alarms blaring, static screaming into the helmets. It's inside the ship systems. It's interfacing." Ethan's heart pounded. What the hell? A flash of movement and Marcus vanished. One moment he was standing behind Ethan, and the next there was only a shadow where he had been. No scream. No trace. Nothing. "Marcus!" Arya yelled, panic creeping into her voice. "Keep calm." Ethan barked, though his own voice betrayed him. "Whatever it is, it's learning. It wants us to panic. It's hunting us, methodically, intelligently. We stick together, we survive." The hallway seemed to pulse around them, shadows twisting in unnatural patterns, forming shapes that suggested human figures, then dissolving. Ethan realized with a chill, it wasn't just imitating shadows, it was imitating life. It had studied Marcus, learned his form, and used it to unsettle them. Arya grabbed Ethan's arm. "The bridge. We have to get there. Maybe the logs, maybe the cameras, something. Answers." Ethan nodded, scanning the corridor for any sign of movement. Every instinct screamed to run, but they had no idea where safe space even existed. Step by step, they moved toward the bridge, keeping lights trained on every corner. And then, the first solid whisper reached them. Not over comms, not through radios, directly into their minds. "You cannot hide, you cannot run." Ethan froze, blood running cold. He could feel it, the presence, probing, testing. The shadows pulsed with anticipation, stretching along walls, floors, ceilings, feeding off fear. Arya's voice shook. It's speaking to us. Inside our heads." Ethan's jaw tightened. This was no simple predator. This was an entity of pure darkness, intelligence beyond comprehension, a hunter in the void that had claimed an entire ship before them. The bulkhead to the bridge finally yielded under Ethan's override. They rushed inside, lights blazing. The bridge was empty, consoles dead, but screens flickered, showing static interspersed with fleeting images of shadows, Marcus' form, twisted and distorted, moving through the corridors. Ethan's stomach dropped. "It's not just hunting us," he muttered. "It's learning us. Learning how we think, how we move." A shadow flickered in the corner of the bridge. Ethan raised his light. It pulsed, stretched, and then, impossibly, took a form resembling him, standing tall and motionless. The mimic was perfect, down to the slightest tilt of the head. And in that moment, Ethan realized the truth. The Odyssey wasn't just a ship in space anymore. It was a hunting ground. And they were prey. The bridge of the Odyssey was silent, save for the low hum of failing systems. Captain Ethan Cross stared at the flickering displays, each one showing brief glimpses of shadows stretching across corridors, twisting into forms that shouldn't exist. Marcus was gone. Taken. And the realization settled like ice in Ethan's chest. The thing aboard this ship didn't just hunt, it studied, it learned, and it adapted. "Sir," Lieutenant Arya Kane whispered, her voice trembling. It's in the ship. I can feel it. Every corridor, every corner, it's everywhere. And it's waiting for us to make a mistake." Ethan didn't respond. His mind raced, cataloging everything they had seen, the shadows that twisted independently of light, the whispered voices inside their heads, the mimicry of Marcus' form. This was no simple predator. This was intelligence. Calculating. Patient. A sudden metallic screech echoed from the corridor outside the bridge. Ethan spun toward the sound, flashlight cutting through the dim red emergency lighting. Shadows surged along the walls, moving faster than they should have, coalescing into shapes that were almost human, but wrong. Limbs bent at impossible angles, torsos elongated, faces featureless except for the faintest glimmer of eyes. "Stay close," Ethan barked. "Don't separate." Arya followed closely, eyes wide. "We can't outrun it. It's faster than us, smarter than us." Another scream ripped through the ship, sudden and raw. It was close, too close. Ethan raised his light and trained it down the corridor. A shadow detached itself from the wall, stretching impossibly across the floor before recoiling into the darkness. "It's taunting us," Marcus had said before he disappeared. Ethan realized now that it had been right. Every sound, every flicker of movement, every echo of their footsteps was feeding it, training it, manipulating them. The bridge doors banged as if something was slamming against them from the outside. Ethan's hand went to the override panel, but the lights flickered violently, then died. The emergency lights cast long, wavering shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "Hold it together," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. "We get through this, we find a way to fight back." Arya's comms crackled, static masking her voice. "Captain, it's learning us. It can anticipate our moves. I don't know how." Before she could finish, the lights flickered again. A shape formed at the far end of the bridge, coalescing from the shadows. Ethan's heart sank. It mimicked his stance, his posture, even the subtle tilt of his head. The mimicry was perfect. "It's me," Ethan whispered, a cold realization gnawing at him. "It's copying us, using us, against us." The shadows surged forward. Arya screamed as one lunged from the corner, its limbs folding impossibly to strike. Ethan swung his flashlight, the beam catching the figure. It flickered, distorted, then vanished. But the sound of tearing fabric, a gasp, a muffled scream told him it had struck. Ethan's mind raced. The creature wasn't bound by the ship's physical limits. It could slip through walls, imitate crew members, and manipulate fear. And now it had learned aggression. "We need to move," Ethan shouted. "Get to the lower decks. Set traps, seal bulkheads. We can't let it corner us up here." They bolted from the bridge, Arya close behind. Every corridor seemed to stretch farther than it should, twisting unnaturally. Shadows clung to walls, ceilings, floors, stretching toward them, mocking their efforts to escape. A sudden flash, Ethan glanced back, and for a split second, he saw Marcus. Or thought he did. The figure raised a hand, beckoning, then dissolved into black nothingness. Ethan's stomach turned. He knew then, Marcus was gone. Consumed. Replaced. They reached the lower decks, barricading themselves behind heavy bulkheads. Ethan checked the sensors. The readings were erratic, flickering between null and impossible signals, echoes of shadows, mimicry of life signs. Arya leaned against the wall, panting. It's inside the ship. It knows where we are. It's waiting for us to panic." Ethan's mind raced. The creature's patience was terrifying. Every moment they hesitated, it learned more, grew bolder, closer. Each corner they turned, each step they took, it adapted. A soft whisper reached them again, not from the comms, not through speakers, but directly in their minds. "You cannot hide. You cannot run. We are everywhere." Ethan's hand tightened on his sidearm, though he knew it would do little. They were trapped in the Odyssey, hunted by something that didn't exist by conventional rules. Arya's voice trembled. "Captain, what do we do?" Ethan swallowed hard, fighting the rising tide of fear. "We survive. We fight smart. We set traps, we isolate it, and we find a way to contain it. We don't run, we adapt, like it does." Outside, the shadows pulsed, as if aware of their resolve. The silence pressed in again, heavier this time, waiting. Ethan could feel it, the predator studying, calculating, ready to strike. And in the emptiness of space, aboard a ship designed to protect humanity, they were prey. The trap was closing. And somewhere, in the darkness, it smiled, or at least, Ethan imagined it did. The Odyssey groaned under the strain of its systems, lights flickering like dying stars as Captain Ethan Cross and Lieutenant Arya Kane made their way through the lower decks. Every corridor was a nightmare of shadows, twisting unnaturally, moving against the angles of light. The ship no longer felt like a vessel, it was a labyrinth, alive with the predator that had claimed their crew one by one. Marcus was gone. The first to vanish, taken with surgical precision by the entity that had learned how to manipulate the darkness itself. Ethan could still see him, or what it had become, a distorted mimic of Marcus, stretching impossibly, twisting in the corners of vision, taunting them. This isn't a creature we can fight with guns, Ethan whispered, gripping the rail. It's something else. Something that exists between the stars and in our minds. Arya nodded, eyes wide and darting. It knows us. Every move we make, every fear. It's inside the ship and inside our heads. They reached a junction that opened onto the observation deck. The viewport revealed the infinite expanse of the Zeta 9 system. Stars shimmered like pinpricks of silver, cold and distant, but beyond them, something moved. Not a ship, not debris. A darkness that seemed to stretch between the stars themselves, pulsing, shifting, patient. Waiting. Ethan swallowed hard. It's not just on the ship, he muttered. It's in space. It's out there, watching us. A sudden movement to the side drew their attention. Shadows coalesced into a towering, semi-solid figure. Ethan's breath caught. This was no mere mimic. This was the entity itself. Its form shifted constantly, limbs bending at impossible angles, surface shimmering with fleeting glimpses of human faces. Marcus, crew members they had lost, their own reflections warped into something alien. It's massive, Arya whispered. And it's intelligent, aware. Ethan raised his flashlight, the beam cutting into the darkness, illuminating nothing yet everything. The entity recoiled slightly from the light, then surged forward, faster than thought, through the walls, through the air itself. Arya grabbed his arm. We can't outrun it. We have to think, we have to be smarter than it is. Ethan's mind raced. The Odyssey's systems were failing. The entity had corrupted sensors, manipulated corridors, erased the line between real and shadow. There was no straightforward escape. But there was one thing they hadn't considered: the entity was patient. Overconfidence could be its weakness. Listen, Ethan said, voice steady despite the fear tightening his chest. It learns from us. Every movement, every hesitation. We make it predictable. We set a trap. We can't fight it directly. But we can make it expose itself. Arya nodded, understanding immediately. They split the corridor lights, overloading the old environmental systems. Ethan calculated the paths the entity had used, forcing it to follow predictable patterns. The shadow surged, lunging at them, only to slam against walls they had reinforced, energy dissipating harmlessly. The entity paused, undulating, pulsing with something almost like curiosity. Ethan and Arya took the moment, moving rapidly toward the Odyssey's escape pod bay. This way, Ethan whispered. The pod bay was small, cramped, but fully functional, at least for now. They could use it to launch, even if the entity followed. The shadows pulsed behind them, surging forward like living smoke, coalescing into forms they recognized. Crew members, distorted, hollow, faceless, twisted. It was mocking them, testing them. And yet, Ethan saw the tiniest flicker of hesitation, a momentary lapse in its perfect mimicry. That's it, he hissed. Now. Move. They sprinted into the escape pod, sealing the hatch. The entity slammed against the viewport, shadow writhing like liquid in the glass. Ethan initiated the launch sequence. Hold on, he said. Lights flickered violently. The pod shuddered as engines engaged. The entity surged against the bay, but the reinforced hatch held, twisting and bending under pressure, but not breaking. Outside, the stars rushed past. The entity's shape twisted, stretching into the vacuum, reaching impossibly long tendrils toward the pod, then retracting. Ethan and Arya watched, hearts pounding, as it slowly dissolved back into the darkness between stars. They didn't follow us, Arya whispered, voice barely audible. Relief and fear warred in her expression. But it's still out there. Waiting. Ethan exhaled, gripping the controls. The Odyssey's escape pod floated silently through the system, away from the ghost ship and the entity that had claimed it. He knew the truth: humanity was not alone. And the shadows that moved between stars were patient. They waited. They watched. And one day, they would strike again. Ethan turned to Arya. We made it, this time. But we've learned something crucial. Whatever's out there, it's not just hunting ships. It's hunting humans. And we have to be ready. Arya nodded, swallowing hard. We survived, but how many won't next time? Ethan looked out the viewport, staring into the infinite dark. Between the stars, shapes seemed to shift, almost imperceptibly, as if aware of their escape. The silent void was no longer empty. Humanity had left its mark, and in doing so, awakened something patient, calculating, and eternal. And in the dark between stars, the shadows waited.